So today I spent a good chunk of time listening to some op amps, and I was in a great spot to do so. I was in a time and an effort and a place where I could do it without interruption. So I spent about 5 to 6 hours listening to these different op amps. And the reason for this shootout is I have to reach out and say thank you to Burson Audio, who said, "Do you want to try the new V7V Classics and V7V Vivids?" And I said, "Hell yes, let's give it a go." The last time I did one of these op amp shootouts, I had tried to put it in. I did put it in the Gishelli Labs JNOG J2, and since then I also have the JNOG J3 Pro. But in this shootout, I did mostly my listening impressions with my pair of Kaei Design's TAP1 Pros. So I have a pair of these, which makes it ideal. So I just simply take off the magnetic top cover, throw in the op amps, and it was super easy to do A and B, very fast switching. So my little brain doesn't forget what I heard 3 seconds earlier. And I thought it was a great way of doing this. And what kind of surprised me, a couple takeaways right off the bat. When I did it in the Gishelli Labs last time, I heard a slight difference, but I didn't hear a significant difference. Let's put it that way. Well, this was a completely different story, and which was great because it really allowed me to wrap my head around the sonic signatures of these different op amps. And so I have 4 that I was comparing against. So one was the stock one that comes in the Kaei Designs, and that was the Muses 02. I already know that kind of sonic signature. I mean, it was kind of interesting to reinforce what I already heard. And then the Sparkos, the SS3602s that I have in one of them, typically it's its home. And then I was swapping out all these different ones, listening to the comparison between the two, and here's my findings. Let's start off firstly with the V7V Classics. Now these are these orange ones. Here's a picture of those. And here's what I kind of got from its sonic signature. I think these op amps in the TAP1 Pro, and again now into the J3 Pro, the Gishelli Labs, this is what I picked up. That bass is actually quite punchy on these op amps and well controlled. Stage is more centered and focused on the V7 Vivids over the Classics, and that was one of the differences. I thought it was smoother and warmer and more organic sounding than the Vivids. Mids are filled out actually quite nicely and sound nicely balanced with some warmth. And because of this amplifier is a tube hybrid amp, I listened to it a whole bunch of times with and without tubes. And what I came away with was the V7V Classics are a little bit colored in a very nicely done way, well done way. Nothing standing out too much, but just adding a little bit of, I would say, not warmth so much as more of an analog vibe going on with them. So quite nice. Now switching, that was on tubes mostly, and then switching over to solid state modes. One of my observations was I found when I switched over, it was more of a balance tuning than when I put the tubes on the Kaei Designs. I find it does then throw, and this was interesting because it didn't happen with the Muses 02, and until I put in the Bursons, I didn't pick this up, where you'd flick the switch over to tube mode and it would it would add some presence to it would be a more mid-forward presentation. And that was a big change over the Muses O2 in that amplifier. So, and I quite liked it, and hugely more resolving than the stock Muses O2 that I think. And I came away with, I think the Classic sounds more musical over the V7V Vivids, more natural and balanced sounding. That was kind of my conclusion on the kind of the two. So now I critically started listening to the V7Vs. And what I found difference-wise, or its kind of sonic signature, is it has a really big stage. And the stage is noticeably wider than the Classics. And it definitely has an emphasis, a sparkle up top in the treble, and there's more energy up top. You can certainly pick that up switching A and B between the two. Was it more resolving than the V7V Classics? Yes, I would say that is true. That slight emphasis on the top end is actually quite noticeable. It does bring more details and strings out. Not resolving so much as it just has a more sharper edge to the trailing edges of notes in strings. You could clearly pick that out, and cymbal strikes as well. It was more of the right that you heard over the Classics. A less colored lower mids, I think, over the Classics is what I was hearing. I think the Classic series sounds more organic than the Vivids sound more analytical and resolving, is kind of how I was comparing the two, or how I was hearing the difference between the two. Now, switching back from tubes to solid state, there was less of a change from the tubes to the solid state than the V7V Classics, which was interesting. It still narrows the stage when you put the tubes on, which is unusual, unlike the V7 Classics. And it still pushes the vocals out, but not as much as the V7V Classic is what I found, because you heard more of that treble, so you didn't quite hear as much of the mid-forwardness in the V7V Vivids than you did the Classics. Now, putting the Sparkos, the SS3602s in, these are the ones that I've had bought from Kaei Designs, had modified so they fit under the acrylic cover, the glass cover. And my observations in this amplifier for these different op amps were in the Sparkos. The Sparkos was more resolving over both of the Burson, the Classics, and the Vivids. It had probably the widest stage and the most 3D spatial effects out of the four op amps, actually. The V7 Classic sounds more intimate in its stage presentation, and the SS3602 sound cleaner and sharper in vocals, even over the V7V Classic and the Vivids as well. Where between the two, I still think that the Classic sounds a bit warmer, maybe more natural sounding, actually, not as digital, and a hint of that analogness. So, where the Sparkos may have had the clarity and the resolution, the Burson had a more organic, natural sounding emphasis on that amplifier. The other difference was the bass. The bass is punchier and more controlled with the Sparkos over the Bursons. The Bursons tend to have a more filled out lower bass, a sub bass, and they're just different synergies for different gear that I was using. Vocal clarity on the Sparkos wins out again, but just by a hair. And the added colored boost in the top end puts the V7V Vivids a bit more unbalanced with the emphasis on to that boost in the treble region, right? Stage is also bigger and wider on the 3602s. I think I said that already, but that was one of my big takeaways. I think the Sparkos does have the best synergy with the TAP1 Pro without the tubes on, and definitely have the best synergy when the tubes are engaged. So it's a good pairing for the Sparkos and the TAP1 Pro. Now, the V7V Classics has still, in my opinion, the most organic and natural sounding mids out of all of these different op amps that I've tried, over the Sparkos, over the V7V Vivids, and the Muses O2. The 3602s in the Sparkos I found probably the most balanced and uncolored out of all of different op amps. Now let's talk the stock Muses O2, what you got in the TAP1 Pro by default, just to give you a bass as well. So I found the bass, and this is again also how you find the sonic signature of different things, is you're by what you know and what you're used to, and then of course in your comparisons, right, in your listening impressions. I found the bass to be less punchy than the other three. I always thought it was a good, solid bass, but after listening to the different op amps, no, the Bursons and the Sparkos were definitely more punchier. And it just has a bit more weight to the Muses than all of the other ones, right? It has a kind of a darker presentation. And here I wouldn't say it's more analog. I would definitely say it's warmer and darker. The Sparkos, in comparison, has less colorization in the mids, better vocal clarity, and the warmth, as did both of the Bursons, right? Best on tubes was the solid state mode. Has a lot of warmth with the Muses O2, and on the tubes pushes the mids forward a bit for a livelier and kind of more balanced sound, I think, with an expanded stage. So again, it was kind of an interesting observations from something I've listened to a lot, but you don't really, the more you listen to and the more you compare gear, you get a better sense of what's going on in that. So it was a really big help for me as well, right? The V7V Classics sound more like the Muses O2 on solid state mode as the Muses O2 on tubes. Just with slightly punchier bass, bigger stage, less warmth, but still retaining great clarity in the mids. So that was how I heard the Muses. I'll probably end up taking those out, and my two defaults on my amplifiers are probably going to be, no, they will be, so far they'll be the Sparkos in one, and I'll put the Burson Classics in the other one. I think that'll give me a good combination of one being very balanced analytical, and a one with a little bit more coloration with the Burson, with a little bit of added warmth and organic analogness. I really like those op amps, actually. So just to conclude this one, how I heard the ones, Sparkos, the SS3602s, the most uncolored, the most balanced between all the op amps, the best resolution, clarity, and details. Least affected by adding the tube colorization in the TAP1 Pro. And it still maintains and keeps its core sonic signature, which I really liked. V7V Classics. Great balance of technical chops and natural organic tonality. More musical than the Sparkos, trading analytical for analog. and that's why I really, really like those ones. The V7V Vivids, the brightest with the most emphasis on the top end, would be my first choice to put in a piece of gear that I wanted to add some liveliness out of maybe a too warm source. And a gear pairing maybe for a more balanced approach. So you're using the op amps with the gear's sonic signature to achieve a different sonic signature, a colorization, and in fact a way of doing it. So synergy, gear, what you're listening to, they all come into play. For most of my listening today, I was listening to the brand new BGVP Solomon, a very, very balanced IM with an amazing frequency response from the lowest lows to the highest highs. So really interesting IM. And then I also tried it with the my Hi-Fiman modified 400i. So that was my gear that I was listening to it with. And I hope you got a good sense of what these different op amps do, and maybe they would be good for you to put in your gear. And that's why it's good to listen to some impressions to see if they would be right for you. But I came away with really, really digging the V7V Classics over the Vivids. Actually, I just thought they were a great balance of. Again, the technical chops and the analogness, and it made with these op amps in that amp, it made a much bigger difference than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was going to be a really hard one to hear the sonic differences, but that wasn't the case at all. So anybody that says that sources sound the same, yep. Gonna say check your hearing, and same as op amps. Wow, it was a noticeable difference, and I came away impressed. So, Tone Deaf Monk, I'm out for now.